Happy Monday. I think we'll start seated tonight. So just finding our way to a nice comfy seat, something that feels supportive for the spine. So if that means you're up against the wall or you're using props, let's do that. And we'll just get nice and settled in here. Big, full, fluid breaths. As easy as those can be for you. And as full as those can be for you. So that the inhale offers a pull into expansion, and the exhale is the ease into the release. We'll give ourselves about 60 more seconds here, just settling in, giving everybody that opportunity to find pull into expansion, exhale into release. Last 15 seconds here. Just keep popping in tonight. I like it. All right, so when you feel right, as you feel ready, eyes open if they're closed, let the chin really neutralize, give yourself a little energy to the back of the head, and then think about keeping the chin on the same plane here and turn over towards the right. And as you turn towards the right, draw that left shoulder back, really feel that shoulder engagement. And then we'll come back to neutral. And we'll turn over towards the left. And as we do that, right shoulder draws back, big full engagement. Keep that head just slightly back. And then we'll come back to neutral. And then one more time over towards the right. Left shoulder is kind of the point of emphasis here. That helps separate that soft tissue between the front of the left shoulder and the chin. And back to neutral. And then over towards the left. And now we go front of the right shoulder and the chin. Really feel that whole anterior plane here, softening, opening. And back to neutral. Take that shoulder space and just give yourself a little movement. Try to really roll, I was being a little loose with that, but really try to roll through the integration of the shoulders here as you move forward. And then we'll reverse that. Or just alternate, whichever way you were going. We go the opposite. It's harder than it looks. And when we're ready, coming back to a neutral shoulder alignment, we'll transition to hands and knees tabletop. From hands and knees tabletop, now I have a little bit of extracurricular awareness at the front of the shoulders. So let's use that. Soften the torso down until you feel that front musculature really start to be active from the torso dropping. And then you can see how I have that big back bend. Try to take that out if that happened for you. So we get a neutral spine, curl your toes, lift your seat, and find down dog. Now, down dog, but we have the the torso down into the shoulder structure. So you're likely to feel some limitation here as you try to push back into that full depth. That's okay, because we're still looking to expand the front of the shoulder structure. And then let's come down to hands and knees. We'll flip the tops of the feet and we'll sink back and into child's pose. Child's pose. Now you can release into the shoulder space, but if you keep those hands planted and you're still integrated in that full torso down into the front of the shoulder musculature, you may feel limitation in the movement of your capacity to go back here. You don't have to stay with that. If it feels right to let it go, let it go. If it feels good to have that little extra bit of pull at the shoulders, let it stay with you. And we're going to give ourselves just about 15 more seconds here. When you're right, when you're ready, hands sliding forward. If they're not already there, we'll pull ourselves back forward to hands and knees tabletop. This time, keep the shoulder and torso kind of at that upper portion, our more natural alignment. Curl your toes, lift your seat, and find down dog. And now we have a little bit more room to play in that shoulder space. You may still feel some of that extra sensation. Try to drive all the way back into the depth of the shape. Then we'll lift our gaze to the front of the mat and we will step our way forward into fold. Inhale into half lift. Really get the spine long. Try to stack the ankle, knee, and hips. And then exhale back into the fold in the same way, or keeping that same stack, ankle, knees, and hips. When you are ready, let's start to drift up from the sacrum, rolling vertebrae by vertebrae until we get into the top of our shape here. Spine nice and tall, mountain pose. Quads are engaged, glutes are engaged, belly is active, draw back through the shoulders, feel the back of the head go back so we have that nice long line. And just hold that for a breath or two. Just think about line belly, line spine, and then sweep the arms up and overhead. And we'll exhale the hands to heart center. And then with the hands to heart center, take the elbows out wide. Squeeze those shoulders back. Keep that back of the head long. And then look up towards the ceiling. And then while we're looking up, chin pushing towards the ceiling, see if you can start to rotate the hands so the fingertips go forward. And then maybe even the fingertips go down. Keep that shoulder engagement back. And then sweep the arms back up and overhead. Feel that shoulder capsule as you exhale forward through fold. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Slide your left foot straight back into lunge. Push back to that left toe mound. When you're right, sweep yourself up into crescent side one. First little opportunity to check in with this shape. Float the hands back down to the mat. We'll step back forward and into fold. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Slide your right foot straight back into lunge. When you're ready with that right leg planted, sweep yourself up and into crescent side two. Anterior hip capsule expansion. Float the hands down to the mat. We'll step back forward into fold. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Plant your hands, walk yourself into plank. Wrist, elbow, shoulder stack. Good, strong belly squeeze. Think about creating that same stability you just had in mountain here in plank. And then keep that as you lower yourself down to your belly. Flip the tops of the feet. Squeeze the elbows in. Keep the forehead planted. Flex the quads so the kneecaps lift. Lighten the pressure in the tops of the feet so that the tops of the feet are just barely contacting your mat. Still contacting the mat, but as lightly and as delicately as you can possibly make that happen. At the same time, think about the tops of the shoulders squeezing down away from the ears and try to maximize the distance between the top of the shoulders and the bottom of the ears. Push the top of the head towards your front of your mat. Forehead is ideally down on the mat. If that's not working, you can go to that chin lift. And then relax. And slide your hands back underneath your shoulders. If they're not there, let's press ourselves up to hands and knees, tabletop. From hands and knees, tabletop, curl your toes, lift your seat. We'll once again find down dog. Press all the way back into that space. Lift your awareness to the front of the mat. We'll step forward and find fold. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Slide your left foot straight back into lunge. Ground your left heel. Left hand's gonna take us to warrior two. Just cartwheeling up into the top of the shape, getting nice and active in the belly. Left heel's gonna spin up. We're gonna find crescent. And then from crescent, just bring your hands down to your hips. Elbows point roughly towards the edges of the room. And then slide back into that right hamstring. So just a little right hamstring activation. And then re-engage, sweep the arms back up into crescent, float the hands down to the mat, and we'll step forward and into fold. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Slide your right foot straight back into lunge. Ground your right heel, right hand takes us up into warrior two. Blossoming into this shape, thinking about getting into the full approximation of that openness of the hips. This is just a transition pose. We sweep the right heel up, take both hands up and into crescent. Then the hands come down to the hips and we slide back. We test out that left hamstring, see how that's feeling. Re-bend that front knee, re-engage for crescent. Note the, I got a little soft in that back knee. Press all the way back in that back leg. Float the hands down to the mat, step forward and into fold. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Sweep yourself up and overhead. Exhale the hands to heart center. Hands to heart center. This time, without taking the chin lift, we're just going to take the hands forward. See what the best way to say that. And then if they can come down, they come down. So either forward or down. And then we're going to sink back towards chair. Not all the way into chair if you can't get that depth, but into a chair where we can keep the knees and the ankles nice and stacked. And then squeeze back from that shoulder space and then bring your chin down to your sternum. Like you're either trying to gaze at your fingertips or at the backs of the palms. Backs of the heels of the hands, better way to describe that. Okay, now rise back up, sweep the arms up and overhead, and exhale through forward fold. And just pay attention to the shoulders here. We're just trying to get those to release. So let your head go into the fold. Let the body relax into the fold in the normal way that you do. And then just drift your awareness to your shoulders. Take your hands to opposite wrist instead of opposite elbows. So right hand grabs left wrist, left hand grabs right wrist, and just rock a little side to side. And as you're doing that, squeeze the shoulder blades back so you get that expansion across the shoulder girdle. And then relax the hands back down to the mat. Plant your hands, walk yourself back into down dog. Try to take that shoulder space that we've created and really make it yours in this down dog. So bend the knee maybe like 10 to 15% extra and really drive back. So if you have full approximation of the hamstring in your down dog traditionally, we're bending the knees and we're getting lower. And then come down to hands and knees, tabletop, and then flip the tops of the feet and sink back into child's pose. And in your child's pose, push down into the finger mounds and lift the heels of the hands. You can even take the thumbs off the mat if that feels good for you, but just try to get some of this back of the hand musculature nice and active. Try to splay those fingers out nice and wide. And then relax the hands. And as that happens, the shoulders relax. And just find your way into a nice fluid breath here. There's a man who's been just kind of generally frustrated with life, generally frustrated with existence. And he's gotten a bunch of advice to get into yoga, like all of these characters do. And the particular mechanism of yoga that he's been most encouraged to participate in is chronic practice with meditation. And he's been consistently given this particular teacher's information. And she has a very specific pranic cycle that she teaches. And from that pranic cycle, there's a carryover into a meditative experience. And she just so happens to be doing a week-long workshop in his area. And he signs up. And in many ways, he's scared. In many ways, he's excited. But he's signed up and he's going to go. When you're right, when you're ready, hands side forward. If they're not, pull yourself forward to hands and knees tabletop. From hands and knees tabletop, send your left leg straight back on the mat. So left toe mound presses. Take that bend out of the knee, really drive energetically through that heel, and then curl your right toes under two. So we have both toe mounds on the mat, but the right knee is a 90-degree bend. Then push down in your finger mounds and just lift your tailbone back. So the weight is in the left calf here. Push back through that left heel and take your right leg and extend it back into three-legged dog. And then step your right foot forward and into lunge. Ground your left heel, hug back through the front of the right hip and sweep yourself straight up into warrior one. So ilium pointed straight forward, both sides of the hip pointed straight forward, belly button pointed straight forward. I feel like there's an optical illusion with the amount of gray I'm wearing tonight. Flip those hands back down to the mat. And take your right hand to the medial edge, big toe edge of the right foot, and let your left hand open you up into side angle. Really try to stack that shoulder structure. Think about getting as broad as you can, and then soften right at the base of the throat. Really try to feel an ease within your breath here. When you're right, when you're ready, left hand comes down, left heel spins up, right hand comes back to the pinky toe edge, right foot steps back and into down dog. And then we come down to hands and knees, tabletop. Tabletop, just set your base position. Think about stacking wrist, elbow, shoulders. Then your right leg straight back. Push back through that right heel. Keep the left toe mound curled underneath you so you're active, but you're pushing into that right heel. Then lift yourself up into this modified version of down dog. The weight is back in that right leg, that right hip, that right calf. They're all really strong. When it feels good for you, left leg extends straight back and behind you. Then we step the left foot forward and into lunge. Ground the right heel. Sweep yourself straight up and into warrior one. Now we know we're not here for long, but we're just checking in on the front of the shape. Then the hands come down to the mat. Left hand comes to the big toe edge. Take your right hand up into side angle. Get that big expansiveness across the shoulder girdle. And then soften the breath right at the base of the throat. So there's just an ease as you inhale and ease as you exhale. Right hand comes down, right heel spins up, left hand comes back to the pinky toe edge. Step your left foot back and into down dog. Lift your gaze to the front of the mat and we'll step or float into that space. Inhale into half lift. And exhale back into fold. Flip yourself all the way up and overhead. Exhale the hands to heart center. Then with the hands to heart center, we're going to take a half step back with our left foot. So left foot goes halfway back on the mat. And now we have kind of a shortened triangle alignment with our legs. Both feet are fully planted here. So if you step back so far that you have to have that left heel elevated, shorten until we can have both feet flat and both arches really active. Then sweep both arms up and overhead. And then take a half fold, like you're reaching the fingertips towards the front of your rim. Try to get your torso so that it's running parallel with the floor. And then sweep back up. And then we're going to take that same half fold, reach and extend out, and then release all the way into the fold. Fingertips coming down to the mat here. Head eventually releasing down towards the mat. When you're right, when you're ready, step your left foot forward so that it mirrors the right. Inhale into half lift. And exhale back into fold. Now we have a little asymmetry in this fold space, a little more room on that right side than the left. Think about what you can do to balance right in the middle of the spine, right at the sacrum. Then awareness drifts to the sacrum. We're going to roll ourselves up, vertebrae by vertebrae, back into our top space. Settle, hands come together, heart center. Right foot steps back, half step back. Feet are active, arches are active. We're really strong there. Then we take our torso forward, extend the arms, really think about torso running parallel with the floor. Sweep yourself back up, find that base position, and then half extend again, reaching and extending out, then take yourself all the way through fold. We get that posterior chain left side, high calf insertion, low hamstring insertion, release the head into the shape. Think about the full depth of the shape, full approximation of this fold. When you're right, when you're ready, we slide that right foot forward so it mirrors the left. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Settle into that fold space. Release, release, release. Awareness drifts to the sacrum. Let's roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae until we're back in the mountain. Sweep both arms up and overhead. Exhale through forward fold. Now you have a ton of space in the hamstring. Try to keep that so that we keep the legs really straight as you come into this fold. Plant the hands, walk yourself straight back into plank. Lower yourself right down to your belly. Hug those elbows in. Squeeze the, take the fingers as wide as you can get them. And then think about squeezing that the lateral edge of the pinky down just slightly. So the very outer edge of the hands just kind of roll under the hands a little bit. Flex into the quads. Press into the tops of the feet. So reverse to the first time we were here. Press into the tops of the feet, maybe 10 to 15% extra. So you're anchoring at the tops of the feet and give yourself that lightning 10 to 15% in the forehead. No, keep it in contact with the mat. So the goal is lighten without breaking contact with the mat. Quads are flexed. Don't lose that awareness of the quads. Kneecaps are lifted because of that. Tops of the feet are pressing. The upper portion of the upper torso, the head, barely lifting. Just the energy of lifting. And we're going to hold this for 10 more seconds. And relax. Slide your hands underneath your forehead and just breathe for a little crocodile pose. Nice work. So this man with trepidation and excitement kind of commingling within him, he shows up at this workshop. And the first day, it's a lot of work. It is 8 hours of very detailed instruction on how each one of these specific breath cycles works. And he sits there anchored and rooted for 8 hours, and he learns these minute little details. And when he leaves, he's just confused. He doesn't feel like he's made progress. And he's fatigued. He goes home and he goes to bed at like 6:30 that night. And he doesn't feel like he really did anything. There was no physical exertion. It was just being seated, paying attention, and making these little tiny minute shifts into each one of these breath sequences. Last 15 seconds here. When you're right, when you're ready, hands slide back underneath the shoulders. We will press ourselves up to hands and knees, tabletop. From hands and knees, tabletop, curl your toes, lift your seat, find down dog. And from down dog, sail your right foot straight back and behind you. Extend back through that leg. Drive energy through the heel and toe mound equally. And push down into the hands to maximize the distance. Then we're going to step the right foot forward and into lunge. Sweep ourselves up into crescent. Feel crescent. Float the hands back down to the mat. And then we are going to take our left foot over to the right edge of the mat. So that is pretty far to the right of the right foot. And push down into the big toe mound. Push down in the big toe mound of both feet as you sweep yourself up into this kind of X-shaped crescent. Much more challenging on the hip flexor on the right side here. So that right hip flexor really working, pushing energetically into both of those toes. When you're ready, we'll float the hands back down to the mat. Take our left foot back over to its side of the mat. Sweep ourselves up into what will be a much less stable version of crescent. We have that right hip flexor. Squeeze into the core, squeeze into the middle of the body to create the stability. Then ground your left heel and open yourself into warrior two. Now, we have fatigue on that back side, but instead of allowing the body to close in, push energetically in both feet so that the toe mound of the right foot is receiving and the pinky toe edge of the left foot is receiving, and then roll open the hips into the space you created in that funky little crescent. Spin the left heel up. We're back into crescent. Float the hands down to the mat. Step the right foot back into down dog. Shift your weight forward into plank. Back, wrist, elbows, shoulders. Get strong in the middle of the body. Shift the weight back into down dog. Send the left foot straight back and behind you. Push into the finger mounds. Press through the heel and the toe mound equally. Really create that sensation of length here. And from that sensation of length, we'll step our left foot forward into lunge, side two, sweep ourselves up into crescent. Now we have a little bit of instability because we have that right side fatigue. So stay with the middle of the body. Then the hands come down to the mat. Then the right foot comes over to the left side and we push down into that toe mound. We want to feel the big toe mound of both feet connect and plant. Then we sweep ourselves up into this funky little cross leg version of crescent. We're still keeping the points of the hip straight forward though, right? So we're using that warrior one shape that we've already been in to utilize or to maximize the ability to keep the hips forward. And we drive energetically into both toe mounds. Keep that stability. Float the hands down to the mat. Right foot comes back to its side. Sweep yourself up into crescent. Now we have some instability in this crescent. Find your ability to stay vertical. Then we roll open into warrior two. And in warrior two, we're using the toe mound and pinky toe edge to expand the leg. Then we're rolling the hips open. And we're staying with that space, with that room. Find your balance point. Then right heel spins up. We're back into our crescent. Last time for this sequence. Float the hands down to the mat. Step that left foot back into down dog. Maximize that distance. Come down to hands and knees. Flip the tops of the feet and sink back into child's pose. Soften the forehead down here. Melt into this shape. We are using the thighs here. We're using the room we've just created in the hips, and we're using the thighs here to offer supported flexion for the spine. So the thighs are going to give the spine the shape that is just going to melt over. And that's really what we're looking to do here. Really melt in over the lower half of the body. And we're going to be here for 40 more seconds. So he comes back on day 2. And he woke up that morning, he felt really good. Comes back on day 2, and some of the pieces start to make a little bit more sense. The day actually goes by really quick. It's 8 hours. It's very similar to the first day. It is minute adjustments to individual pieces of a pranic practice that is someday eventually going to get put together in a way he's not sure of yet. When you're right, when you're ready, hand slide forward if they're not there. Pull yourself up to hands and knees tabletop with fingerprint energy. And from hands and knees tabletop, let's send our left foot straight back once again. So left toe mound presses, we get that big full engagement. The right toes curl underneath you, and we're gonna lift up into this modified version of down dog. So that right knee is forward, or that right foot is forward, left leg is all the way back and all the way into the shape. Then right leg extends straight back and behind you. And we'll step our right foot forward into lunge. Ground your left heel. Take your right hand over the big toe edge. And then slide your right leg back into triangle. Now we haven't taken the torso into anything, so you have a lot of control here. You can stay with the torso low, and you can just slide back into the hamstring. That can be perfect. If you want to fully take your triangle shape, you can take that left arm and you can really start to reach it up, stack it into this more traditional triangle shape. But if the hands are down, we're still getting that posterior chain expansion. So does not have to be traditional here. Think about lengthen the back and lengthen the back of the hamstring or back of the leg. And then bend your front knee, right knee bends, left hand comes down, spin the left heel up, step the right foot back into down dog. Come down to hands and knees tabletop. Send the right foot straight back and behind you. Keep that left toe mount active. Push all the way back through that right heel, energize through that right leg. Lift yourself up into this modified version of down dog. Left foot is forward, right leg is fully in down dog. Then the left leg extends straight back and behind you, three-legged dog. We'll step that left foot forward into lunge. Ground the right heel, left hand comes to that medial edge. And then once again, you have the choice. We slide back into the left hamstring. This can be the perfect shape, or maybe we take that right hand up. Maybe we find that full approximation or that full traditional shape of triangle, but we don't have to. Think about the length of the spine, maximize that openness of the hips that you've created. And then our left knee bends, right heel comes up, right hand comes down, left foot steps back into down dog. Lift your gaze to the front of the mat and step yourself forward and into fold. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Sweep yourself all the way up. Exhale the hands to heart center. Turn the palms or the fingertips either forward or down, whatever feels right for you. And then we're sinking back into a chair. Keep the front of the shoulders expanding out. Rise back up, sweep the arms up and overhead. And then exhale the hands behind the head, thumbs down, and push the back of the head into the palms. And then sink yourself back into that chair. Now there's a huge desire for the knees to go forward here. Think about tailbone back. Something about putting your hands behind your head like this really wants to drive the knees forward, really counterbalance that tailbone back. And then drive back up. Keep the hands behind the head and push the elbows out towards the edges of the room as you exhale through fold. And at the bottom of your fold, maintain that elbow out energy and feel the impact on the low back. So we've shortened that posterior chain. We're in a space where we've opened up a ton of hamstring room. We have the capacity here. Remember, you can bend the knees, but really drive that space into the low back. And then release the hands down to the mat. Walk yourself back into down dog. Shift your weight forward into plank and lower yourself back down into your belly. As you come onto your belly, flex the quads, keep the hands under the shoulders, squeeze the elbows in, splay the fingers out wide, roll that pinky edge just slightly under the hands once again. So we're really pressing into that pinky edge as the elbows squeeze in. That really helps us keep the elbows nice and parallel with the lateral edge of the rib cage. Press down into the tops of the feet. This time you can break the forehead contact with the mat. Try not to change the cervical spine angle. Try to really extend out from the back of the bottom of the neck, base of the neck, all the way through the top of the head. And try to draw the chin back in the same way we did when we were just in mountain, in the same way we've done a couple of times. We started out with the seat with our chin back. Try to recreate that here in your baby cobra. We are going to hold this for 15 more seconds, which is an incredibly long cobra hold with this much musculature engagement. But it's a short week. We can do this. And relax. Nice work. Hand slide underneath the forehead, little crocodile pose. Kind of our 3/4 of the way check-in here. So the bulk of our movement is behind us. Just asking ourselves where within the body we could still use just a little bit of slight emphasis tweak, a little bit of extra length. And relaxing with each exhale breath. We're going to be here for about 40 more seconds. So day 2 kind of blinks by. He goes home. He feels a lot more energized. Something about the way that the day played out. Even though it was very similar to the first day, he just feels more energized. And he comes back on day 3 with that same energy, and it's a little bit of a slog again. It's like he's already learned these things, and now he's having to make these little tiny changes that he just feels like are unnecessary. When you're right, when you're ready, slide those hands underneath the shoulders, press yourself up to hands and knees tabletop, hands and knees tabletop, curl your toes, lift your seat, find down dog. From down dog, get that length from the finger mounts all the way through the tailbone. Remember, you can bend the knees, try to extend the length of your spine here. Really try to maximize the distance between the hands and the tailbone, and then try to get another millimeter out of that. When you're right, when you're ready, we are going to walk or float to the front of the mat. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Slide your left foot straight back into lunge. Ground your left heel. Take your right hand and bring it on the medial edge, big toe edge. And then take your left hand and reach back like you're trying to grab your left foot. So we can, if it feels comfortable, you can grab the hamstring, you can grab the calf, you can grab the ankle, you can grab the toe mount. And then start to walk your right hand towards the front of your mat. And then start to feel the openness in the inner groin here. And start to bend more intently into that front knee. See if I can get the arm out of the way so you can see that. Really creating warrior 2 legs here. Warrior legs, I guess. And then what we're going to do is we're going to walk our torso to the middle of the shape, and we're going to roll ourselves up into warrior 2. And at the top of the shape, just blossom the arms out and settle into what is a surprisingly challenging, a surprisingly physically taxing version of Warrior Two. Spin the left heel up, crescent, float the hands down to the mat, step forward and into fold. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Slide the right foot back into lunge. Ground your right heel. Left hand comes to the big toe edge. Start to walk that right hand back towards the right leg. It can be the calf, it can be the hamstring, it can be the ankle, it can be the toe mound. But we don't lose the bend, the awareness, the shape of the front leg. And that's why that hand is there. It really is blocking you from allowing your foot to turn in over it. So keep that planted there. Then you start to walk that left hand forward. And with the left hand forward, we've spaced out the shoulders. Now we're gonna bring our torso to the middle of the shape and roll ourselves up. And then we just blossom in with all that low back space, with all that hip space, with all the work we've really done all class into this final version of Warrior Two. Right heel spins up. We're into crescent. Roll into that depth. Float the hands down to the mat. Step forward into fold. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Sweep yourself all the way up and overhead. Last time, hands come to heart center. This time, the heels of the hands are going to separate. So it's just the finger mounds here. Let's see if I can get a good view of this. So we keep the fingers together, the finger mounds together, but the heels pull away. And with that energy, sink your seat back in the chair. Remember, tailbone back, not knees forward. And then keep the heels together. Turn the palms towards the front of your room and push and extend those arms out, keeping the hands folded here. Not a good way to show that, but keeping those finger mounds together, heels open. And then draw back, sweep yourself up, and exhale into forward fold. Nice work. Sink the seat to the heels. Send the legs out in front of you. Follow the leg extension into a forward fold. Settle into that fold. Breathe into the length of the low back. All of the openness, hamstring openness, high calf openness, hip openness, transitioning now into this low back expansion of forward fold. And we're going to be here for 30 more seconds. Really, really relaxing into that back expansion. And when you're right, we'll walk ourselves up to a vertical spine and reward ourselves by releasing onto our back. And really feel the reward of the support underneath you. Let the arms be supported as well. They can be in cactus. They can be down by your side. They can be out towards T, but they're supported or they feel supported. And we'll give ourselves about 30 more seconds just to appreciate what we've done so far tonight. And eventually bring those knees to a bent position so the kneecaps can point towards the ceiling and the feet can be rooted on the ground, and then start to add like a 1-inch sway. I usually don't put parameters on this, but really try to make this sway small and start to feel the musculature around the sacrum as you're moving here. And then you can start to slowly think maybe a 1/4 of an inch expansion at a time. Really slowly start to expand out. The entire exercise here is to feel the musculature around the sacrum open. To feel that musculature that can get really tacked down, that can get really tight, that can get really angry. Just start to mobilize. And for some of us, if we've been tapped down for 20 years, and then we create a little bit of freedom, there's going to be some extracurricular sensation here. So we don't want to be just swaying through that and numbing the experience that we're having around the sacrum. Eventually, you can start to move. Some of us can start to move into full twist. That might feel right. But for some of us, it's not going to feel right to go into full twist. So some of us are going to stay with this little femoral head sway in the pelvic bowl. And it's not infrequent that I say that, but I think it's especially important tonight. And then if we're going into full rotations, we're going to let our knees fall to one side or the other. If we're not, we're going to let the bottoms of the feet walk their way out to the width of the mat and let the knees come in towards one another. So that there's just some support. And I'll let you know when we're halfway through. So day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, they're all kind of a mix of frustration and progress. And eventually, the pieces of this chronic cycle start to fall together for this man. Last 10 seconds here on this first side or first position. When you're ready, we'll either fall over to that second side, or if you have the knees together, you can stay exactly here, or you could go bottoms of the feet together, knees out. It's actually a relatively gentle shape, even for the hips and sacrum, but that might not be the thing for you. So just if you're looking for a space, experience something that feels good. If you're in a twist, try to find a counter equal to that first side twist. Day 6 and day 7, the pieces really start to come together. And at the end of day 7, this man's gone through this 5-part sequencing of this pranic practice. And he's drifted into this meditation that he can only describe as profound. And he feels the energy within him elevate and the frequency around him shift. And after the workshop is over, he goes up and he talks to this teacher and he tells this woman, you know, I'm so thankful that you shared these teachings with me. I had such a profound experience. And she offers this extracurricular package. And in this extracurricular package, there's kind of a weekly check-in, nominal fee. He's absolutely thrilled to sign up for it because he wants to continue this practice and he wants the guidance and he wants the same level of profound impact that he's had from this experience to continue on into his life. Last 10 seconds here on this second side or second shape. And when you're right, when you're ready, returning your knees back into a neutral alignment from wherever they are, letting your eyes close, letting your awareness drift within you and asking yourself if there is anything you need before Shavasana. And if there is anything you need before Shavasana, offering yourself whatever that might be. And then eventually making your way into a shape where you can fully appreciate and settle into a Shavasana. He goes home, he goes to work the next day, and everything has changed. The profoundness of this experience, the profoundness of this workshop is right along with him. His coworkers seem friendlier. His energy seems more vibrant. And when a challenge pops up in his day, he overcomes it with ease, with grace. And at the end of the week, he gets on his call with this teacher and he explains to her how profound this experience has been, how his entire life has changed, how when problems show up, he overcomes them, how when social interactions come up, he flows with the ease in and out of them. And she's really excited. She's super happy. It was so impactful for him. And they set up their talk for next week. When you're right, when you're ready, completely relaxing into your version of Shavasana. So every night from this workshop on, he has been practicing this series of chronic steps into a meditation. And he has been feeling this profound change in his life. The next Monday, he goes to work and he has put his shirt on inside out. And he gets there and he checks his email and there's a fire drill. And then right before he's supposed to go to lunch, he gets called into this emergency meeting. And the rest of the week kind of goes exactly like that. Frustrating and tough and like it used to be before he went to this workshop. So to bring some movement to your fingers and your toes. At the end of the week, he gets on his call with this teacher from the workshop and he tells her that the profoundness of the experience is worn off. He's doing something wrong or he needs something to add, but he's lost what he had. This profound impact from this practice is gone and he's doing it every day. And he thinks he's doing it exactly the same. And he details out to her movement in your wrists and your ankles. He details out to her exactly what he's been doing and asks her if he's doing anything wrong, if there's anything he can add. Moving up into your elbows, your knees. She listens. She says, no, you're doing everything right. And he says, well, why is the impact gone? Why is this profound change that happened in my life no longer here? Movement in your shoulders, your hips, your neck, and your head. Eventually, there's enough movement in our body that we can transition from the shape we are in back into a seat. From the seated space, our spine gets tall, breath gets fluid, eyes closed, body is at ease here. Settling in, anchoring in to the room we've created in our physical bodies. And she looks at him through this Zoom call and she says, you know, the profoundness hasn't changed. The profoundness of an experience is not tied to if the world happens the way you want it to or not. The profoundness of an experience is tied to how you respond to whatever happens. And with that, we'll inhale our hands together at heart center. Over the course of the next 7 days, especially in a holiday week, when we want everything to go perfect, and they won't. Can you remind yourself the profoundness of your gathering, of your experience will be determined by how you respond to whatever comes up, and see how that changes your week. Thank you so much for being a part of tonight's practice and for being you. Namaste. Appreciate the heck out of you guys. So nice to see so many of you tonight. Have a beautiful rest of your week, short week, holiday week, whatever it is for you. I'll be back on Monday to recharge, Monday to move again, and Sunday to recharge. Love you guys. Have a beautiful Thanksgiving. Mwah!
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.